morning. I am not a gardener. You should all be thankful that I refer all questions about growing and gardening to our resident expert, Bob Dahm. If you haven't been to Bob's home and experienced his wonderful gardens, you really should go and see them. Tours are on the hour, Monday to Friday. I've just returned from a wonderful vacation in the mountains of Colorado. Sarah, in her sermon 2 weeks ago, spoke about the beauty of the lakes in northern Wisconsin. So, in keeping with that kingdom theme, I'd like to continue the discussion about weeds. I returned from vacation with a couple of days left to catch up on some chores at home. In our backyard, off of our patio, is a hill overgrown with vegetation. My wife Carrie, had planted a few things to try and reclaim part of that hill. Returning home, this is what our plantings look like. Somewhere in there were the four things my wife had planted: snow on the mountain, daylilies, ferns, and a couple of bleeding hearts. Not being a gardener and still being on vacation, I was not excited to tackle this project. It was 89 degrees out and humid, and I was to be working on a hill. Nevertheless, I began. Having plenty of time to reflect on my efforts, the metaphors and symbolism became obvious. The overall objective was to give the good plants room and light and water to thrive. Some weeds were harder to remove than others. A small maple sapling, for instance, was much harder to pull out than a simple weed. Some weeds mimicked the look of the good plants, and you had to be careful not to pull out the good plants with the weeds. Some weeds intertwined themselves as vines and curled around the plants and cut off their light. And some weeds actually looked better than the plants I was trying to save. They had colorful flowers, that sort of thing. Back to the metaphors. I thought about how infrequently, for whatever reason, busyness, disregard, lack of discipline, preference for self-gratification, indifference, whatever, that I purposefully looked at the weeds in my life. Most, if not all of them, are easy to identify, but how often do I really, honestly look at them with the eye of a gardener and try to make room for the good plants to grow and thrive? Obviously, not often enough. And it's not a one and done proposition. If I'm not out there on a regular basis, everything will revert to weeds again. The good stuff will still be there, but not visible and certainly not the dominant vegetation. Jesus lived in an agrarian society, so his parables needed little explanation for his followers. He talks about the wheat and the chaff, wheat and the weeds, good fruit and bad fruit, and he actually interpreted many of his parables directly for his followers. I came across a piece of scripture that I really appreciated for its directness and clarity and no need for interpretation. It's Matthew 12:33. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. He goes on to talk about the consequences of what kind of fruit we bear, but the command is clear: be a good tree and bear good fruit. So that's my prayer for myself and for you, that we can harvest our weeds, be good trees, and bear good fruit. Ultimately, after way too much effort, our hillside looked like this. My wife was thrilled that I was tackling my weeds. I'll leave the deeper interpretation of that for another time. Oh, and it's always good to have the enthusiastic support of your colleagues and friends. Have a great week.